Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lucifer, the latest episode of Legends of Tomorrow, as well as the latest episode of iZombie. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Lucifer, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Legends of Tomorrow, or skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of iZombie. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Lucifer. A lot of stuff went down in this episode. First of all, story played out a lot differently than I thought it would. The whole situation around Cain and Abel's situation, especially the way Lucifer was presenting at the beginning. I brought it up last week's episode too. I thought we were going to do like a time travel thing. It's like, oh, go back in time and kind of prevent the whole thing. I don't know whether it's going to be like, oh, prevent Cain from killing Abel, or do we make it so that get in the minute it was way so he doesn't put the mark on? That was kind of my thought process. And in a moment, Lucifer's erasing it because he does this little caricature, little stick figures representation of it. And it's like, oh, lo and behold, he's not talking about that. What he's talking about is actually going to hell, retrieving Abel's soul and putting it in a body. Because to him, it's like, if Abel is alive, then it kind of like undoes all the bad stuff that Cain did by killing him. It's like, oh, well, he's no longer dead, so it kind of erases that sin that he got for being the first murderer. Which, and in a sense, it's like, you can understand where it's coming from, but it still doesn't undo the fact is that his brother still died. So the act still exists. Hence why I thought, oh, the whole time travel thing before. But it's like, I mean, eventually maybe that's something they could tackle. I don't know if that's in their realm of possibilities with the whole celestial beings thing. I mean, that could ultimately be like an end point for it all, and end up, with like normal time travel has disastrous consequences. Maybe that's something they could still potentially go on. But for now, it's this. And it's such an interesting thing, and I love Cain being like, well, my brother's in hell? It's like, good. No, he deserved to be in hell. Like, everyone thinks it's just me. It's like, no, my brother was an asshole. I just thought that was kind of interesting. But sadly, it doesn't work out, and instead of entering an old man's body like they wanted him to, he ended up in the body of a woman named Bree, who died roughly around the same time, which Bree is the assistant of a producer named Alexa, which they're part of the whole case that Chloe's on this week, because basically a package exploded, and it, in a sense, it killed Bree, but it's like, oh, was it meant for Alexa? So it turns out that whole situation. So the case took many different interesting turns all across the board. First of all, there's the fact is that it's like, oh, maybe this one dude who wrote the Z prophecy, I think his name was Liam Wade. It's like, oh, like, what was he about? Why was he pissed? It's like, no, basically he was warning Alexa about a apocalyptic type of situation. Apparently, like magma pipes or whatever underneath the earth, or like in the earth's core, kind of getting blocked. And then Dan's kind of like, oh yeah, it's like basically the plot to that movie she made, like The Plunge or whatever, which basically dealt with that same concept. And he's like, well, yeah, because of that, like no one takes the whole thought seriously. I don't know if that's scientifically a serious thing that could happen. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that. I mean, it seems like more like that's a crazy person type of theory is what that was kind of seemed like. That was kind of what that was kind of being set up as, especially with the whole like, oh, Z prophecy thing. So but basically what ended up turning out that everything had a connection to the Bolivian mob. At first it's like, oh, maybe Bree's connected to it, but in actuality it was Alexa, basically the Bolivian mafia. I mean, she even talked about it herself earlier in the episode. I mean, like, not talked about it specifically, but kind of hinted to it, because she was like, oh yeah, I'll do whatever, because it's like, because she doesn't make a lot of money, she can't be picky about stuff. And so they probably presented her like, hey, well, you launder our money and you get a good enough cut of it. And it's like, oh, well, lo and behold, there we are. So, and that's what the whole that's the whole Bree situation, because Bree didn't take the bribe. She wasn't okay with everything. She was going to rat them out. So hence why this happened to her. So that's pretty much like the case in a nutshell. But there's many different elements to that. For one, I love the fact is Chloe's working with Dan, which we don't see that happen a lot, because more often than not, she's working with Lucifer. So it's kind of interesting to kind of see it kind of go back a little bit to like the start for them a little bit. They never really comment on it, but it's like, oh yeah, like, because usually there's Lucifer, so he's kind of acting as a buffer, as a partner in this particular, that type of scenario. But it's like Dan's working with her, and she's mad because Lucifer's off hanging out with Pierce, and she's like, no, actually it's not fair. It's not even about Pierce, it's about Lucifer. It's like, I trained him up. Nobody wanted to be his partner, but I did. Now he's actually a decent, consultant and partner to work with, which is kind of interesting. They don't even throw around the word consultant anymore. Like, that's what his original job title was, but I don't even know if they count it. Like, it's just like a pure, I don't know, maybe just a lot of TV shows are like that anyway. It's just kind of like, even though you're a consultant, you're still considered a partner anyway, but don't know. Nevertheless, that's where my brain goes off on my little tangent. Nevertheless, but it's like now Pierce can just call him up whatever, and then Lucifer's so okay with it. It's like it's so interesting because she felt so betrayed, and then later on when it was like, oh, Bree might potentially have been like, God, not extorting, embezzling money from Alexa's company and stuff like that. And then Lucifer's like, oh, well, she's probably doing that. And then Chloe kind of got pissed. She was like, no. When you're loyal to someone, that loyalty, you're supposed to stay by them no matter who comes and kind of sweeps you off your feet or whatever. And it's just kind of interesting because usually it's Lucifer who kind of makes cases about himself. And now Chloe's done it. Actually, the second time in a row, because of last week's case, she was kind of getting caught up in all the high school stuff. And now it's like, oh no, because she feels betrayed by Lucifer. And it's like, it's so interesting that she's so jealous and possessive. It's like, no, he's my partner. And even Dan kind of called her on about it jokingly, but still, it was just kind of interesting. There's that element. And then there's a whole element around the fact is that Cain has to deal with the fact is that his brother's now in the witness's body and kind of dealing with that. And it turns into a whole conversation of like, because I was wondering why Lucifer's like, because Cain's like, okay, we're gonna have to bring Decker in on it. He's like, okay, you tell her. And I was like, why is Lucifer like that? And it's like, oh, because he thought she was going to chew him out, but he didn't. And he's like, what the hell? I usually get argued out for less, and you're just gonna be okay with it. It's like, well, for one, he's the lieutenant. Yes, you lost our witness twice, but hey, well, you're the lieutenant, so it's not like she can get super pissed or whatever. So it was just kind of an interesting development. But overall, like really quickly, I want to interject with talking about the fact is there's a lot of interesting things we kind of learned in this episode. We learned first of all that Abel was the first soul to ever go to hell, and even Maze was like, yeah, he was the first one I ever practiced on torturing. It's not just me. Every demon probably started with him because he was the very first. It's like, so that he's probably who they practice on and perfected their torture techniques on, which is so interesting to think about. It seems like every scenario was just no matter what the place or time, because apparently they switched it up all the time. So it actually made him super adaptable to any situation because he knows multiple languages and stuff like that. Just because they set it up in different scenarios and times, but it always end the same, that Cain would come and kill him. Because that was kind of like, because it's more so your guilt, but it's also probably like built around your fears until you're like, well, that was them torturing him, and the thing he scared of the most was, his brother at the time, so obviously. But it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because there was a really quick line from Lucifer where it's like, well, no, I don't really know. He's like, I'm a big picture guy, so he never really does any of the torturing. He kind of knows how to torture, but I guess that was kind of near the beginning, and subsequently since he has it, which kind of begs the question, like, the whole operating system of hell, because hell is kind of self-sustaining, hence why it kind of keeps going even without him there, because basically hell is built around like, oh, your own guilt, your own conscience is basically what tortures you. So if that's the case, it's like, well, did Lucifer called himself the big idea guy? So it's like, was he the one that constructed hell to be what it is? Because it seems at the beginning it was literally Maze and them who would torture people. I don't know if that's something where demons just kind of get like, well, now we have nothing to do now because hell's the way it is, or maybe they still do torture people from time to time. Maybe they pick people out. Oh, we haven't tortured that person, pull them out of their hell, torture them, and then throw them back in their hell. Maybe, I don't know. But the thing I was wondering about is, I don't see Lucifer as a constructing type. Maybe he did, but there's a part of me else that's wondering, like, was there a demon or someone else that actually helped him construct it? Was he the idea guy and someone else constructed hell? If that was the case, who's the one that constructed hell and made it kind of the self-sustaining machine that it is? It was just kind of an interesting thought that's kind of floating in the back of my head. Abel is very interesting, constantly hitting on ladies throughout the episode, never realizing his particular situation. Even at one point walking up to the ladies that he first run into, and he's basically talking about basically putting his seed in them, which is kind of like, okay. I was like, it's kind of weird that you say that knowing your condition. I was like, oh, because it didn't pop up until Amenadiel showed him who he really was, which is so interesting that Amenadiel immediately got on that. It's like, how did you know about that? Does he still have angel radar where it's like, whoa, there's a soul missing? How did that happen? Like, or did he hear it from Mason? Like, I don't get how you found out about that. That's kind of interesting. Not unless Lucifer kind of blabbed, not really knowing that Amenadiel would try to interfere, even going as far as Amenadiel trying to get him to kill himself, just like, oh, so he can go back there. Because he's like, oh, I'll take you back. I was like, you don't have your wings. How are you going to send him back to hell? Okay, that's one way, I guess. So that was just kind of an interesting thing. I mean, just because Amenadiel keeps getting in Lucifer's way, which kind of brings up an interesting conversation about, like, well, the fact of the matter is, like, you're just going to anger Dad, which Lucifer's kind of fine with, but Amenadiel's kind of like, the fact of the matter is, you don't know about Dad's wrath. He could easily take from you, which Lucifer's like, I've got nothing left to take. He gave me my wings and he took my devil face. What's still left? It's like, which we all know that there is more to take, but obviously he's not really thinking like that. But it kind of pops up in his head and later on with the whole bomb situation with Chloe, because I'm sure if it was Lucifer probably would have been like, like Chloe wasn't going to leave Bree behind and everything. When it's kind of like, it's just Abel, who cares? That's even why Cain was kind of like, just go. It's like, I don't care, that's my stupid brother, just let him blow. But obviously can't let him know. Then but Chloe's just kind of thinking of like, well, this is someone else's daughter. I'm thinking of my own daughter, which is like, Dan's freaking out. He's like, don't do this, Chloe. And even Lucifer, because I'm sure even if Chloe had left, they would be able to do something about it. Because, okay, Chloe get far enough away, Lucifer can probably just grab the bomb and just take the explosion like it's nothing. But I'm sure you'd have to explain that away too. I thought that's the direction it might head, but it's like, no, Chloe stays behind, and Lucifer's like, I'm not going to leave you. It's like, you're my partner, and it just kind of makes her feel better. It's like, yeah, my partner. And then, Pierce walks her through deactivating it. So luckily it all worked out, but it put things in perspective for Lucifer. Like, I'm putting Chloe's life in danger too. If it's just my life, fine, but I won't put Decker's life in danger, And then it ended up making him do something he's never done before, back out of a deal. Like, even with Cain, he's like, I'm sorry, but I have to do this because what I say, but obviously it's also not only just because as his partner, like Chloe's very important to him, and he would never do anything that would put her life in danger. He'd do whatever it took to protect her, and doing that with me, kind of pushing this aside. He can't do any more things that would ultimately come back. Yes, he's pissed at his dad and would do everything, but it's like, not if it means costing Chloe her life, which I guess an argument could be made, like, would God go that far, especially when he went, because he went out of his way to make Chloe, got admitted out to kind of play a part in that. So it's kind of like, you would think he wouldn't, I don't know, but just, I guess, in Lucifer's head, once again, we don't know what God's really thinking and how he really feels, because we've never really gotten a real introduction to who he was. Closest thing we got was like last season with the whole God situation of that guy being possessed by God's will, like his essence to a certain extent. So it wasn't really him, but that's the closest thing we've kind of gotten. So, but in this particular, beyond that, we really don't know. I mean, and maybe that's just because that was that fraction of God's will kind of inside of a human. So that doesn't mean it's necessarily how God currently feels or how he would act or whether he'd really say those things to Lucifer. I think so, but maybe because it was in a human body and because it kind of put all the, God and you being like, it just kind of put things aside and just like, made it a father and son moment. So maybe at the bare bones, like, whether, putting everything aside, the whole God, him being Lucifer, you're still my child thing. So maybe when it comes down to that, maybe that's how God would really feel, but I don't know. We would have to wait and see, but because I'm curious, like, how he reacts. Because I'm in this particular situation, I'm kind of giving God a better benefit of the doubt. Like I said, it's a whole bunch of family drama and family issues. But I think, it's just because Lucifer's looking at things from one perspective, his perspective. So, like I said, we just don't know where, even a minute deal, I feel like even he doesn't really look at from God's perspective. He's still looking from his own perspective of a son trying to do his best for his dad, So even he doesn't really know, But to be fair, I guess their dad's kind of raged out in the past for him to be like, yeah, watch out for dad's rage, So, but nevertheless. What did interest me is that Cain was kind of like, you know what, okay, but still, I'm going to keep doing this. But he's like, and whatever I do, it's got to obviously be connected to Bree, because when it's all said and done, like, she's got to have some part to play in this. Because even bringing Abel back, even Abel killing him, it wasn't enough because his mark still didn't go away. But it was interesting because Abel was like recognizing like, oh, you've been in hell much like I have. So that was kind of interesting. And then we go back, then you have the fact is at the end, it kind of caught me by surprise. I was like, oh man, the taxi almost hit him, and he just kind of, okay, and walked, and then an ambulance hit him. I was like, wow. Because Cain was like, as long as he's still alive, and I was like, oh man, Cain's going to have to stick with him, because it's like, okay, we need to go our separate ways, brother, until we can kind of figure things out. And it's like, okay, so obviously I was like, okay, Cain's going to follow him. It's like, he's going to have to keep an eye on him now to make sure he stays alive. And it's like, immediately gets hit. I'm like, oh. So, and because Lucifer's not willing to do stuff, I'm like, so they did one or two things. Either he's dead, which I highly doubt it, because I doubt Lucifer, like I said, I was about to say, like, we'll go back to hell, get his soul again, and put it in a different body. I doubt that, just because he is trying to say, oh no, and away from the situation. Maybe he'll do one last favor for Cain. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm thinking more likely it's just like she got severely hurt, but it's like she's good. So that's probably something we'll probably see continuing on, is like Abel being like, yo, all right. And then like Pierce keeping an eye on her to make sure him, to make sure that Abel stays out of trouble, stays alive long enough that he can figure out this whole curse situation. So I am curious to see what ultimately will happen, because it's kind of an interesting thing that Cable. I mean, I keep saying Cable. I keep combining their names, and I feel like I'm all, because like I'm not expressly thinking of Deadpool, but I think every time I say that, it's just I'm literally just saying Cain, but then Abel comes out afterwards. So nevertheless, Cain said an interesting thing where it's like, when he does eventually die, it's like Lucifer's like, oh, so where are you going? The pearly gates or hell? And he's kind of like, oh, it kind of sucked that that going through all you going through, that you still kind of end up in hell, which kind of be messed up, considering the fact is, it's like, well, your life has kind of been in hell, and then on top of that, going to hell, it's like, that would kind of suck. Which, really quickly, would he even want to go to heaven too? Because I feel like he'd be a little spiteful towards God. It's like, yo, so here I am at that. I think that'd be an awkward situation. I mean, Cain's kind of like, no, I won't go to hell, because hell's all about guilt, right? He's like, my conscience is clear, which I don't think that's true. Because to him, he makes it seem like him and his brother, like, the reason why they fought and everything was because they fought about everything. It's just that particular situation turned into a bloody situation, turned into a fight. And it's like, the only reason why, like, things played out the way they did is because, you know, because he even points out, like, why did my brother go to hell? Like, even though I'm the one who killed my brother, he ended up in hell. You know why? Because he was just as easily trying to kill me as much as I was him. So he's just as at fault. I'm just the one that kind of got punished in this way. Obviously, he got punished in his own way, too. So, I mean, Abel knows the situation now that he is on Earth and everything, and Cain's situation, but does he even know who Lucifer and Amenadel is? Like, I know he met Amenadel and everything, but at the time he was like, who are you? How do you know so much about me? He now knows that Maze is one of the demons that tortured him, but I'm like wondering, did they fill him in on everything else too? So, but like, I don't think that's the case. I think Cain does hold some guilt over it and does feel bad, or maybe because he doesn't feel bad, maybe that's what it's connected to. Maybe it's because Cain's not at peace for what he did, because even when he talked to Chloe about it, he still kind of like looked a little bummed about it. I don't know whether he's just kind of like, and that's the proper response considering their situation, or is it just because he does legitimately feel bad? But I think that's something that should be kind of taken into consideration. Like, his response when he talked about Chloe is like, yeah, my brother died, and it's like, he looked legitimately sad. So I think it is a lie. He does feel some remorse, and his conscience does eat away at him about it. So that might be the ultimate thing. Until he forgives himself, he won't get the mark off. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. So another element to the story is the whole situation with Amenadel and Maze, and she's beating the crap out of him. And it comes up that whole conversation of Amenadel being like, me and Linda were just trying to protect you, but for Maze, it's still like, you lied to me for like weeks behind my back and stuff like that. But then again, Amenadel brings up something like, you broke up with me, so why should it matter who I date? I think, which is a twofold question. Like, if it wasn't Linda that Amenadel was dating, how would Maze react to the situation? If it was just some random lady, would she care? I mean, she's been with people subsequently since a minute ago, and she's kind of, I think intentionally on some levels, kind of thrown it in his face. But at the same time, it's like, would she be reacting the same way? It's kind of the question. But at the same time, you also understand, because that's her friend. One of the few friends that like Maze has, and it's like, now that friendship's kind of ruined. And even messed up even more because Amenadel was kind of like, oh, you're breaking Linda's heart, which now it's like it pissed her off, because she's like, I don't even want to beat you up anymore, you know? So it's that twofold thing where it's like, you understand what they meant, but like, oh, we're trying to protect you because we do care about you. But at the same time, it's like, you still lied to her and went behind her back. If you, like I said, if you were up front, maybe things would be different, because the fact of the matter is, they say that they're protecting her, but it's like, in all honesty, and you kind of admit it, it's like, you were protecting yourselves, because you knew that Maze would have a problem with it. If you'd come forward, like I said, maybe things would be different, but it's like, you were protecting. I think that's also another angle to it. You were protecting your own relationship, whether you realize it or not. Yes, you ended things, but you still betrayed Maze, and she doesn't handle betrayal well. I mean, granted, she was pissed at Lucifer for a while, and they've kind of slowly mended fences. I feel like they're still not as tight as they used to be, because like I said, Maze has kind of got her own life, while Lucifer's kind of got his own. Like, she used to be so loyal, she'd always following him around, like, you know, the protector that she is, kind of his guard. But that's no longer something we see anymore in the show. We haven't seen it in a very, very long time, you know, except for like glimpses to the past where we see her kind of acting more like that. That's the only times. Like, that would probably say like season 1 Maze was like that. Subsequent season Mazes haven't been like that, you know, so. And another one was the whole Charlotte situation. I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. I'd never even thought about that before until this episode. I was like, right, we still don't know what her hell is like. Because she was kind of reluctant about working with Linda because Linda's not helping her get her memories back, which under her circumstances, I don't think that's even a possibility. That's why, like, Linda's not even entertaining that idea. But it's like more so than anything, that's not the main issue here. Yes, it plays a part, but Linda knows she can't really help her too much with that because that was some celestial circumstances around her losing her memory. But then there's the other side of things of like, oh yeah, she's describing it like, oh, you're endless loop in hell. It's kind of what it feels like. And it starts getting a little too real. So like Charlotte's like, no, because she's a bit of a control freak and she doesn't like kind of passing on the reins to someone else. But talking to Abel, hearing like Abel, like obviously she's thinking she's talking to Bree, and Bree's like, oh yeah, I believe you. You're smart about this whole situation, so I kind of put my faith in you. And she's like, really? You're just going to give up control like that? Isn't it scary? It's like, well, yeah, but not nearly as scary as what I was before. If you know a hell like that, you do whatever it takes to kind of get out of it. And so it kind of put things in a different perspective for Charlotte. And we end up finding out what her hell is. Her hell is basically, and it changes every time. Just kind of like Abel's hell was constantly changing the time and place, but it always ended with Cain killing him. In Charlotte's case, it's like, no, like she's sitting at the table with her family, and then some guy who she helped get away from justice, cleared, that basically was a bad person, kills her family. She just sits there and smiles and can't do anything about it, and she has to relive that over and over as kind of her hell, and each time it's a different person. So it's a conscious eating away at her, because even though she lived a life where she helped bad people, even then it's still the situation of she knew that they were guilty and she was helping the wrong people. And basically it's manifesting itself as like, because of what she did, it could be not just her family, but the substitute situation could be like, oh, this is someone else's family. Because of a bad guy she let go, more terrible stuff happens. And it could just it's just her conscience trying to eat at her for what happened. I mean, that's the whole point of hell. So, and it's so heartbreaking to think about that. And even she's kind of like, she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't want to go back to hell, but it's like, what do I do to kind of work on that? And I think she is heading in that right direction. And Linda's telling her, like, that was a great start. And I'm curious to see, because hell is built around your own consciousness and everything like that. So if she learns to forgive herself, would that be enough to kind of keep her from hell? Because people themselves are what torture them. So I'm curious, in the long run, would that ultimately be what is necessary, Because Lucifer's not the one that decides who goes to hell. It's kind of people themselves, essentially. So I don't know. Like I said, this whole show kind of puts the whole situation in a very interesting perspective. So, but under these new developments, I am very curious to see what happens in the next episode going forward with all of this, especially like May's and Linda's relationship, because I was curious about that, but it hasn't come up this episode. Like that was the whole Amenadel and May thing was the closest thing we got to that. There's a whole Amenadel situation, like, will he continue to be a thorn in Lucifer's side? He's kind of letting Lucifer kind of do whatever he wants. But to be fair, Lucifer's backing away from this. So I'm curious to see what Amenadel has to say about that. And also, if Abel really did die, are they going to put him in a new body? Is his body as Bree still okay? I kind of want it to still be Bree, just because of him walking around just talking the way he does, like hitting on ladies. And not just like hitting on ladies in in a very piggish way. To be fair, it's been millennia and people handle things way, way, way differently back then. But still, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of funny. So, also, I really appreciate that episode, like that part of the episode where like Lucifer's like, okay, you can put your thumb now, and don't say where you like to stick it next. And then it hard cuts to like May saying, up your butt. Talking about she's going to stick that toy up his Menedel's butt and just open it up. It's like, wow. So I just thought it was just from an editing standpoint, that was beautifully done. Like I said, I'm just very interested to see where all this takes us in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legends of Tomorrow, a fantastic episode. I love that literally 75% of this episode was purely dealing with the Dark's whole situation. And it's just, like I said, it's just so interesting what they do with Damien Dark. Like, I feel like they added a lot more comedy to his stuff ever since he switched over to being on a Legends character. I feel like he's a lot more serious in Arrow. He has some quips here and there, but I feel like he's a lot more half jokingly, half serious. And I think it plays into him kind of being a little like it, because he's kind of like, it plays into like his like psychoticness, and just because, oh, he's so psychotic that he's so evil he'll kill you, also joking about it. The whole situation with Alan tossing him up and down, talking about like, talking to Nora about, oh, should I go about it dating, it's been a while, I mean, how long should I warn your mom? And Eleanor's like, okay, go ahead, Dad, if you want to. He's like, oh, thanks, honey. And he's just like, oh, what, I haven't gotten any replies. And one of the people he's like profiles he was on, it said her name was Carrie. I can never remember her name, but I think it's Cupid from Arrow. I think that was like her signature. We have not seen her since season 4, I think, was the last time she's popped up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the last time she popped up. And wasn't the last time we saw her, she was in jail? So why is she on dating sites? I mean, I guess you could still do that even while you're in jail. But nevertheless, that was just kind of an interesting little nod. I was like, wait, isn't that her? So yeah, that was totally her profile picture. So I thought that was funny. And then he's up there talking about his age and everything. It's like, oh, what about what I put for hobbies? It's like, well, I want to take over the world and kind of mold it to my own image. And it's like, oh, I also like new recipes. And then Alan's like, well, you said on your age that you're 199. He's like, well, yeah, I can't go any higher. Can you do something about that? He's like, don't worry, dude. Everyone lies about their age. And it's just like, he's so into it. I felt so bad when he killed Alan. I was like, oh, I mean, tossing him all around, didn't kill him immediately, toss him side to side and up and down, just kind of yawning partway through, like, oh God, this is so tiring. I felt it just sucked so much that he killed Alan. And then later on, he has that like psychotic moment where he's laying beside Alan. He's like, oh, it's so hard being a dad. It's like, you know what? Thanks, Alan. Thanks for listening. And then Alan's dead there, blood pouring out of his body. It's just like, oh, that's so twisted and morbid. But I love that the biggest part of this episode dealt with Ray and Eleanor spending time together, because basically going back in time to get Vogel with the whole Cold Fusion storyline. And just, I like the hijinks that even under these circumstances, you still even have Ray kind of feeding into it and everything, like into the jokes and everything. Because it's almost sad, because you hear that Nora's just a little girl still trying to impress her dad, because everything she does, she's like, I want my dad to see that I'm not just his little girl anymore, that I can take care of myself, that take care of everything. So I also love the fact that they had to go up against a younger Damien. It's like, you can't go because, that caused a problem. I mean, mainly it would mess up his own timeline, because at the same time, I'm like, aren't you trying to destroy time? So wouldn't it help you to actually create a paradox by him meeting himself? But they want the time to kind of get messed with, sure, but they don't want it to be messed with to the point like it interferes with, Damien Dark eventually doing what putting him in a position to be where he is right now. So there's that whole situation. But still, I thought that would play into it. But it's like, no, he's like, Nora, you can't go up there because you're going to be going up against me in my prime. You don't stand a chance. Nora also didn't have her magic. Her time stone got broken. And so they're trying to protect Vogel long enough so they could get information about the Cold Fusion. I just love the interactions and the back and forth between them. And it makes it even weirder and funnier because that Courtney Ford and Brandon Routh are married, so it makes it even more interesting seeing her back and forth, like her about to slam Vogel's fingers with a hammer, but she stops and then she throws it and it hits Ray, and then like he's doing something and she's hitting him it's like, stop being stupid. It's kind of adorable in a sense. Just this whole like adventure I thought was funny. Like there's even little interactions with Damien Dark, and it's just it's like almost little therapy sessions. It's like, I don't know what to do. It's just like, I'm trying my best here. He's even calling, getting mad because Eleanor's like, oh, at least Vogel's being a good father. What about you? You handed me over to a demon. He's like, because I thought, what's the best for you? And it's like, no, you just wanted me to resurrect you. And he's like, well, look at you just being a demon's mouthpiece. You don't even need me anymore. And then just Nora walks away and he's choking Ray with his powers. And at one point he's still choking Ray. He's like, well, fine, you can speak at any moment. He realizes, oh, I'm still choking. Never mind. And Ray's like, well, the fact of the matter is she just needs to know that you're proud. He's like, I am proud of her. It's like, she knows that. It's like, she only knows what you tell her, Damien. I can call you Damien, right? And he's about to start using those powers again. It's just like, it's so good. Because Ray being who Ray is, like, even with the bad guy that Damien Dark is, like I said, it's just, they made it so much lighthearted. And I think, and it also fits the theme of this season too. Like I said, I feel like this season, in my opinion, seems like it is like the bigger, jokier season. It's kind of like the same thing for The Flash, because I feel like this season's a lot more like lighthearted in summer. Like I feel like it's a lot more jokey this season, and I feel like it really fits with the Legends. Like I said, because even they kind of crack jokes. Like, yeah, we mess up all the time. It's like it takes a little while, but hey, we and we mess up, we come back, we reformulate a plan, and we kind of go back into it. That's kind of what Ray was explaining to Eleanor about how they should handle the situation. Like things didn't go as planned, but hey, I mean, also that stems from the fact this Ray's like the most positive person out there. So I thought that was just kind of a nice touch. Like it is, like in a twisted way, it's so sweet because he's like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you, honey. You're the best." Damien having to fight his younger self, obviously hiding his identity, holding Nora up with his powers while also like stopping bullets, like some Matrix shit, and then also like pushing himself away. He keeps dropping Nora, lifting her back up, and just at one point Nora being like, "Just let me go, Dad. I can't stand to lose you again." He's like, "I love you," and lets her go. And she activates the totem, which that's a whole nother story in itself I'm going to get to soon enough. But them working together and taking down younger Damien. She's like, "Oh, good job, old man." He's like, "Really? I look pretty good for a 267-year-old or something like that." Just, like I said, it's a beautiful bond between the characters. It's a little sad because I was pushing. And it's something even Damien was kind of get at because like Nora was like, "We can't torture him. Torturing doesn't work." Why are you? I sent you here on your own, and you're up here talking like a good. Oh, Ray, you got inside my daughter's head, which is like it didn't seem like he didn't necessarily do a very good job at. But I thought that's what the storyline was going to head towards. It's like no, she kind of walked away from this kind of being more like still the same. They repaired their relationship a little bit, so Ray kind of helped in that regard. I mean. Not in a way that he'll ever get any thanks for, but he kind of took their relationship in a better direction. So that's something. A lot of dysfunction in that whole family situation. So I just, like I said, it's just such a fun episode in that regard. I am sad that Vogel still ended up dying. Like Ray was trying to get him out of there, but like Damien killed him because like I can't let you interfere with my record. And I'm like, oh, so close. Because I was hoping that when it came down to like trying to be good, that Nora would be good, and that's how she'd be able to use the totem. That eventually, well, because it was something Kuwasa said. She was like, once she stopped using the totem just for power and start using it for a selfless reason, then it'll kick in. She wanted to save her dad, so maybe that's. I mean, it still seems obviously she's still borderlining on the darkness and everything, because even Ray was like, oh yeah, there's good inside of you, show him what's inside of you. I mean, besides a demon. But I was hoping, like, spending time with Ray would kind of bring out the good in her again. And then be like, hey, like, she activates it, but it's also representing the fact that, oh, she activated it, but she's good. But then again, it's like, you look at its color compared to how it looks with Amaya. Amaya, the spirits look blue. With Nora, they look kind of like purplish, but, purple kind of representing, I guess, darkness. So now she's got that, which I would assume means she no longer needs her typical magic, which I'm curious, like, how that, well, that more so comes from Mala, so I guess she's kind of doubly armed, which is kind of interesting. The way the episode's playing out at the end, it seems like she's supposed to be Mollus's, like, host body is what I'm kind of getting at with that whole situation. Which I'm curious, is that what the ultimate goal was, always to kind of prepare Nora to be his host? I kind of feel like it might be Sarah. It's like he might be like, I feel like he probably has the biggest interest in Sarah. Maybe Eleanor's the temporary body until he gets complete control of Sarah, or maybe this is all about getting his original body back, or what? I guess maybe because, I don't know, because you would think that would actually hurt him. I mean, maybe it's not, because at the end we see her face cracking, her eyes turning red. It seems like he's gaining more control of her body, or maybe it's just the evil spreading in her a little bit more, representing like Mollis is getting more and more free. But the fact of the matter is he's not completely taking over her body. He's just kind of fueling the darkness in her even more, I guess is what the argument could be made. I'm curious to see what Damien Dark does about it, because even he like feels a little bad giving her over to the Order, but to him he thought, it's kind of the best thing. Because for him it's like world domination and stuff like that. He didn't want that to be the career for her. He just wanted it to be done so he could pass on the entire world to her. I didn't want her to have to spend her life trying to conquer the world like I am. It's like, no. Let the world already be conquered, and it's her like playground to mess around with. It's essentially, it was kind of his mindset. I mean, and to be fair, it kind of makes sense on Damien's part why he I think it's that father-daughter relationship where I always treat you like my little girl because you are my little girl, but also because the last time he saw her, both in the sense of the TV show as well as canonically speaking when he died, she was a super little girl. So, I mean, to be fair, like I think between season, it's been like 2/3 years since the events of like him dying. So that time frame has to be kind of kept in mind too. But I mean, all I'm saying is that kind of fuels even more the fact is that he looks at her as this little girl. But the whole point I was also going to bring up is like, because the totems are supposed to hurt, maybe because she's been accepted by the totem, she's gotten control of it, and the totem is filled with darkness now rather than light. So maybe that's either it's because she's accumulated its power and so it doesn't hurt anymore, or because it's filled with darkness, it doesn't hurt anymore, or basically a combination of two, because both could kind of apply to the same point. But still, I guess that's why it doesn't hurt, because remember the last time, like when Nora was possessed by Mollis and Zari touched her, it hurt. So that's why I'm kind of wondering about that. But nevertheless, maybe that's the point, to also get a body that's also acceptable to the whole. Nevertheless, I'm going well off the tangent, but nevertheless, a lot of changes to the team. Not really changes. We do have Ava being on board and Zari's walking in. It's like, oh, maybe we should do. Oh, hey, of course we wouldn't do that. Going to just check out some place and talk. Because obviously this is a very important mission, and this is an important vehicle for traveling. Oh wow, Ava, you're here and you're wearing the same clothes you were on before. Oh, okay. And even change it, like even when Rip shows up, it's like, oh, Ava, you're here. Does that mean you're working with the Legends are working with the Time Bureau? It's like, I'm working with Sarah and the Legends. But we're working separately. And it's like, and then Sarah's just kind of like, okay. Really quick, I'll go ahead and bring it up. Rip saw them making out and everything. He's like, oh, so you and Sarah. And she's like, yeah, I think it's something real. And then he tells Gideon to erase something, which we got another season of Rip keeping secrets. That's never a good thing. It's like, Sarah can never know the truth about Ava. And immediately in my brain, I go, okay, one of two things. It might go with what I've already brought up before. I keep blanking on her name. Sharp from The Flash, the lady who had the bad luck ability. She's dead in The Flash, right? I brought that up before. She has that name, and her, and they both named Sharp. I feel like there's got to be some relation there, right? So not unless it's like, oh, she actually has a sister, and but the fact that she's dead in The Flash, so the possibility is maybe Ava's an anachronism herself. She shouldn't technically exist because her, like I say, I don't know how far in time the whole like Time Bureau is. Like I don't know what time period Ava's from, because it's never really been dived into, and maybe that's kind of the point. But nevertheless, I don't know. It's just kind of, that's immediately where my brain goes, because I kept bringing it up. I was like, oh, they both have the same last name. Is that just a coincidence? I feel like there has to be more to it. I mean, to make it especially sense too, and make even more sense now too with the way the story is going with everything within the Flash, but also now that Legends is coming on before the Flash on like Mondays, so I don't know. I think it's something we have to kind of keep in mind. That's where my mindset is. The other thing is too that she's not human, like she's a robot or something like that, an android. I mean, very least something like that. But I feel more so the first one. We'll see. But that's my number one theory, is just the whole, like, she's an anachronism, which it shouldn't be that much of a problem, considering the fact is that Lily's one too. Not unless this is supposed to mean, like, well, the whole point is, like, once they take down Mollis, because we end up learning in this episode, Mollis is basically, the anachronisms are meant to break him out of time, like, out of his prison, which I'm not surprised. I kind of already figured that out, just because of the whole, like, breaking time and everything. It's like, oh, Mollis must exist in, like, because I thought like it was a situation of like Mollis is scattered all across time, or whatever, hence to the way he could kind of get to wherever he wants to, kind of like what Savitar wanted to do. I thought Mollis was kind of like that, and that he was kind of imprisoned across, but it seems like it's kind of like a situation of he exists out of time and space, at least his prison is, and apparently he was imprisoned by the first totem bearers, so that's why it hurts him. Also, we see that the ancestral plane that Amaya had been to before is destroyed. Also, really love that line where it's like, oh yeah, so how do you know Nate? Oh man, me and Nate, we were kind of, working together in Central City. Like right after like some like major bitch like broke up with him. Like on his birthday too, and just right, oh man, it sucks, right? And then Amaya's like, yeah, I know, like, so I'm that major bitch, and Wally's just like, whoa, and Zara's like, you might want to go, Wally. He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that's super awkward. At the same time, it's kind of interesting, because I'm trying to remember canonically speaking. I mean, with the whole way timelines work and stuff like that, it's hard to say, because Nate and Wally both kind of went through a breakup roughly around the same time. It's really kind of hard with time travel and everything to really say who went through it first, but it's just complicated situations in their love lives, so it's just kind of an interesting thing. I also appreciate we got a little taste of Wally going into action, running off the ship, grabbing Ray, also taking the fire totem pieces off of Damien and returning to Joe. I was like, ah! And I love Dark being like, oh, a speedster. I hate speedsters. So it's like, well, to be fair, which makes me wonder, because technically everything was undone because of the whole the Legion of Doom last season. So that never happened. So I guess he's come across speedsters at different points in his life. Like, did Barry ever cross paths with Damien Dark? I don't remember. I mean, to be fair, maybe it's a situation. He's been around a long time, so maybe he's come across him. But I don't remember if Barry's ever going, because like I said, this isn't Damien Dark from season 2, because they brought him back to the 80s and they wiped his memories. So I don't know. Maybe Barry helped him at some point in time, because like he wouldn't remember Eobard. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thing, because I was thinking like, oh yeah, obviously he hates him because of Eobard pushing him around. It's like, no. Also, like, the fact is that Wally was like, yo, what's up, Sarah? It's like, that wedding was crazy, until the Nazi showed up. And then Rip was like, Nazi? Wait, what? And it's like, it's a long story, dude. Don't worry. It's not even about a time thing. It's more like of a different Earth thing. Yeah, don't worry about it. But nevertheless, we do have Wally sticking around, so that's pretty cool. Gonna have him part of the Legends for War, which I'm like, yeah! He's like, oh, I'm gonna go off with the Bureau. I was like, don't do that! Oh, yeah. Also, side note, Ava's kind of the leader of the new director of the Bureau, because because I was so certain, I was like, oh my god, it's gonna turn out like, oh, they don't realize he's gonna reveal at this point that he's actually working with Damien Dark, and it's like, nope, Grodd is beating the crap out of people, and then you don't get to see it, but you can hear Grodd smashing and killing him, and Ava's so distraught, and you have Sarah and Rick being so super okay with it, because like you have Sarah being like, oh wow, I mean, he was a good guy, I think, and Rip's like, well, you're kind of the leader now, so what? And she's like, oh, yeah, you can continue investigating, and it's just like, no, like they took it well, to be fair, I guess, because they didn't really know him, didn't really care for him, but it's like, Ava's like, oh my god, that was my boss that just died. That sucks, seeing him getting pummeled by Grodd, no less. Because I almost completely blanked on that too. I mean, because technically, I guess, time travel and stuff like that, because this was, it's an anachronism of Grodd, right? Isn't this him from a different time? Because the last time we saw him, he was on Earth too. So I guess this is Grodd when he's pulled from a time period. I don't know whether this past or I would assume like the past, but it could be like the future or something like that. Because the last time we saw him back in season 3, when he was but he was taken back to. No, he wasn't, was he? He was on Earth. They left him here to be imprisoned, didn't they? I think so. I don't remember like what happened. I think Barry told him to leave Grodd here so he can be imprisoned, I think. Maybe they took him back. No, I think it's the former. So that's probably most likely him from present day. That's working with them. But never like it's time travel. It's confusing. Especially when you don't remember the status of certain characters and where they are in this whole grand scheme of things. But nevertheless, so that's pretty cool to have Wally a part of the crew. I also love that there's that bit of a thing that they like, oh yeah, Wally's like, oh my god, stealing those glasses from Roy. He's like, oh, once a thief, always a thief. And Nate been like, no, it's cool, Wally. Like, we all kind of like snatch some stuff, we do a little thieving aboard here. It's fine. They're kind of called souvenirs. It's like, I didn't know you guys did that. Like, I feel like this is the first time they've openly admitted. Like, we kind of screw a time with a little bit to the point that we actually take things. It's like, small stuff that isn't too bad. It's like, hell yeah. It's like, wow, you guys are thieves. That's so interesting. That's why they probably don't bust Rory too much. It's like, Rory gets to get his little thieving out, and we also get to enjoy a little bit of history by taking it as souvenirs. But still, it's kind of cool that they do that and even admit it. It's funny. You even had a conversation between Nate and Ray. He'd be like, whoa. Don't tell me you actually have a thing for Dark's daughter. I mean, yeah, she's hot, but she is also a little crazy, which in fact makes her even hotter. But at the same time, being like, I see kind of that big heart you have, Ray, because Ray's kind of like, no, but even after spending that time with her, kind of realizing, even underneath that, there's more to her than, he's like, he still believes that she can be saved. I also love, I completely skipped over, it was the beginning message of him being like, oh, by now you probably realize I've been kidnapped, and you have Zari being leaning over to say, should we actually tell him that we didn't even notice he was gone? It's like, no, we probably shouldn't even say that. I was thinking like that was a message Ray had set up ahead of time because he knew he was getting kidnapped. And it's like, oh no, it was a message that he was being forced by his captors to send out. I thought that was so good. Like I said, overall, fantastic episode. I'm very excited to see what goes on in the next episode with Wally part of the team, finding out whatever secret Rip has in store, plus this whole Mala situation. I'm very curious to find out who he really is and like what he's capable of doing, as we've seen bits and pieces of it, but eventually he's going to get fully free. What's going to happen between Nora and Ray, because that seems like a thing that's happening, which once again, funny just because they're married in real life. So it adds, I think it adds even more to it now knowing it's, because part of me is like, oh, I kind of feel like it's because I'm going to be thinking about it every time I see them on screen again. I'm like, I wish I didn't know, but at the same time, I was like, it makes it a little more interesting because I know. But nevertheless, but I was, like I said, I'm very curious to see what Damien will do going forward, because it's like, oh, like he would do anything for his daughter, and it's like, well, she's being possessed, so maybe he'll temporarily join up with the good guys, because it's like, hey, you saved my daughter from this smallest situation, then we're good, so I'll go off and be a bad guy somewhere else. You guys can be heroes and stop me some other time, but for now, let's join forces. Maybe we'll see something like that. We'll kind of have to wait and see, especially because it seemed like more so reason for it all, because like Kuwasa is supposed to be kind of coming over to their side. Like one of the few people I'm sure they won't be able to convince is Grodd. Grodd's always kind of doing his own thing. So I don't know. We'll see how the whole situations for everyone, whether like Kuwasa and Damien switch sides when it's all said and done, because like all of them will have to work together, especially Kuwasa. I even love the fact is that Damien was kind of setting that up as like the totem being his, like, oh yeah, the fire one. We're like, oh, there's even one for me, which was really interesting too, because Kuwasa was like, yeah, no matter what happens with the totems, you can't actually destroy them. They're kind of internal. Like it's probably a situation of like the totems probably will always find a way back to each other, even if it's broken. Even broken pieces have a lot of power, but it's probably a situation of like it's an internal spirit and internal power that would never go away. It just probably kind of one of those things where it has to exist and it always will exist type of thing. So I don't know, like I said, fantastic episode. Super excited to see what goes on in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of iZombie. Basically the main overall case to this episode, it's kind of interesting because like I feel like a lot of times the cases typically don't have anything to do with the main overall plot to a certain extent. In some cases they do, but this one I feel like it was kind of a catalyst for kind of pushing the main plot forward in some regards. Basically, it involves Liv eating this lady named Mrs. Brink's brain. Pretty brutal death. It was basically she was killed by a golf ball gun that just hit her so hard it just stayed lodged in her head and everything. And obviously, upon eating her brain, Liv kind of turns into a mean person. She's just very uppity and just thinking like kind of a one percenter type of mentality, just like oh, everyone's a lowly servant, even treating Clive like he's a driver. Come on, oh, like calling him a dummy and just treating people like trash. I mean, to be fair, that kind of helped Clive with the case and everything, because it's like all the servants at the house are like, oh man, she's the best, she's the greatest. It's like, but looking at the way Liv is acting, it's like, I know you're full of shit. Like literally while they're saying like, oh, she was this and that, Liv is over there literally contradicting what she's saying, what they're saying, and then at the same time, just Clive spending so much time with her. It's just like, you're so infuriating. I just, so I didn't love it later on when Liv is like, she's like, I've been awful. And Robbie's like, no, yes, you've been awful. You've just been downright terrible, but it's okay. It'll be all okay. It's really interesting because when it was all said and done, basically this lady was going to leave them all $1 million upon her death. I guess they gained some loyalty from her. Like, I guess she felt like she did owe them for all their years of servitude, because it seemed like, the lady, the chef in particularly, the one with the son, Alex, she seems like, because she even talked about the fact is that, like, the lady hadn't spoken a single nice word to her in, like, 15 years, because each one of them had their own particular situation. The driver, he was kind of like, he not only drove her, but also had sex with her. And it's like, and then Liv is like, oh, and you also got money from her. You know what that makes you? A whore. And it's like, woof. She's so judgy. Even Clash is kind of like, yep, you said that. Then you had the other dude whose whole situation was, his daughter was trying to get into like basically a college, but it didn't work out because Miss Brinks didn't kind of put in a call and the work that she was supposed to. And so his daughter stayed here, and because of that, she became a zombie. So, but it turned out that the one behind it all was the mom, because she would, like, her son has a heart defect and wouldn't give him the money needed to get him to was it California? I think it was LA in particular, where his dad was and where he'd be able to get the surgery. There's a whole like aspect, Cause we ended up learning more about, like, obviously there's a wall and everything, but it's not that easy to get out Like, because if people are in Seattle, they have to be in Seattle. There's no getting out of that. And that's an element that we kind of really touched on in this episode. I thought was really kind of interesting. But it's so sad because Clive wants to help, but it's very illegal. And then Liv kind of playing it up like, oh, of course not, I'm not helping him. But then when she gets to Ravi, it's like, nope, she was faking there in front of Clive because the brain had finally worn off and she was feeling sympathetic and everything. She wasn't kind of her asshole self while she was on Miss Brink's brain, you know? And so it was a situation of like, you know, she gets Ravi's help and they, you know, even the two servants, they put their money together too, because obviously, you know, being servants, they probably grew a bond together too with the lady. And it's like, I mean, this is her son. Of course, we're going to do whatever we can to help. So it's kind of like, because that mom, everything she did, even this murder, is just one of those cases of just like, it sucks because you know why she did it. It's just like the lady could have helped, but it's like, I'm only going to help if I die. And it's like, her son can't wait that long to, for that surgery because he would die without it. So ended up sneaking past Major, which I'll kind of get to that a little bit later on. But luckily, he was like, oh, they can go on through. So granted, I don't think everyone else on the team knows his connection to Ravi and Liv. I don't know if they really know who they are. But nevertheless, they end up meeting a lady named Renegade. She basically runs like a human underground railroad type of situation. And excuse me. She knows exactly who Ravi and Liv were. And they're like, wait, we know... have we met? She's like, it's okay being forgettable. And it's like, that can't be someone that we've met throughout the story. That has to be someone that, I don't know, like to the point that she would know Liv and Ravi was kind of an interesting thing. And that immediately sets up a very interesting thing so far because it's also like, oh, there's this whole human underground element. Like I said, we're learning slowly but surely more and more about Seattle's whole situation as the season is slowly progressing. But it's like, you can tell it's such a small thing here, but obviously it's an introduction to something much bigger. And it kind of I love that this situation also plays into Liv and Major, because obviously we end up finding out Liv and Major are sleeping together, which is like, it's them kind of falling back into old habits because they can't really be with anybody else. To be fair, Liv's love life hasn't really worked out. It's literally striked out 3 seasons in a row, technically 4. Technically 4 relationships that kind of fell apart, but it's like 3 times in a row because there was Lo, Drake, and then Justin, and now, like, you know, but she's come back with Major, but that was more so like, oh, you know, we can because we're both zombies, it's fun, you know, we already know each other for so long, but now this kind of split everything up because for Liv, it's like, you were going to chew me out for doing it, but it was for a kid. But like Major's like, you could have compromised like you could have put yourself in so much danger, you could have like put me in danger. It would have, like, I would have gotten frozen or worse because of that, because of the way everything's set up. Like, they are not playing around. Like, zombies who break the rule get punished severely. So where Liv, it's like the Major I knew would have done, like, helped a sick child without a second thought. But for Major, it's like, you're looking at me and like, I'm so disgusting because he went back to Fillmore Graves, and after Fillmore Graves did what it did create in this situation, granted, it wasn't all of Fillmore Graves, but it's like, there were still people in that organization who felt like that and who did this, there's some people probably, I mean, at this point in time, they probably weeded out everyone that felt like that, but still, it's like, this all happened because of Fillmore Graves. You never actually found out whatever happened to that lady's daughter, did we? The one who, one of the ladies named Carrie Gold, the one who kind of orchestrated everything last season. What about her daughter and her friend? Like, I forgot whatever happened to them. I think they were kind of brought in like in the like last bits of the season 3 finale, but nevertheless. But now it's kind of sad because you understand where, like, because Major is doing his best. Like, no matter what the circumstances are, he is doing his best. He is trying to keep peace. He's not trying to cause any problems. It's like, oh, don't think of us as soldiers. Think of us as kind of peacekeepers. They said, I want to keep the peace because he doesn't hate zombies. He doesn't hate humans. He just wants to keep that perfect balance. He wants to make sure that everyone stays safe and happy. But, you know, but Liv at the same time, it's like, you understand, because it's like some lines need to be crossed, because, I mean, especially considering who Major is, what he did at the beginning, being kind of like, counselor for, like, you know, kids on the street. I mean, plus he's kind of in that situation again. He's got 2 kids under his belt, trying to train them and stuff like that to survive this world and kind of keep the protection up. And I guess that's even more so reason why it's like, but still, like, would things be different if they let him in on the planet? I don't know. because it's a situation of them both being in two different worlds. If you had this point where Major's like, oh, I'm so tired of your holier than thou mentality, thinking like you're the only good zombie, that every other zombie is bad. It's like, no shape or form does she think that, but it's just like it's just Fillmore Graves, she doesn't like their approach, which is like understandable, like especially because the way Seattle has become with like the way its laws have been set up and everything. It's very like a police state, essentially. It's kind of like they have the power to kind of make the demands. They kind of decide how things work. To be fair, yes, they balanced it so that zombies that don't play by the rules are heavily punished too, but it's not the safe place, kind of free place that it once was. It's kind of under, martial law, essentially. I mean, because in this episode too, you had a whole situation around those guys causing problems at the shop. You have, Major trying to handle that peacefully, and it's like, okay, that's fine. But one of his charges, she kind of gets super pissed and starts chasing after dude when he takes her helmet and everything. And during the scuffle, like, she beats the crap out of him and ends up scratching him. He was like begging his friends, like, kill me, I don't want to be a zombie. His friend's about to do it, but the other one, like, another one of the soldiers, I think it's the dude that's under Major's charge, ends up slamming him and stopping him from using the gun. The other one gets away with the recording, which that's going to look bad, because it's like, oh, here's a man who wants to die, but they're forcing him to stay alive to keep him as a zombie. It's like, oh, they're going to spin it and make it look like no, zombies are trying to amass their army, so they're willing to scratch people. You have to be more wary of zombies, so it's probably going to be spun in a way like that, which is just going to escalate things even more, because he's just going to be one of those people that turns into a self-hating zombie that the moment chance he gets, he'll probably kill himself. But also, it's just not going to look good, because it's like Major, like I said, Major tried to handle things peacefully, not trying to hurt anybody. It's just like, hey, let them go on with their lives. But she kind of lost her cool, and so it's just one of those situations where it's like you got to keep your calm, but it's not the easiest thing, because things are spiraling out of control immediately. It's like, it's not a situation that, like, certain situations makes it seem like, like the police station, you don't see the police station being really divided. But I mean, to be fair, we don't know how everybody feels. Like, yeah, people kind of avoid Liv and stuff like that because she was spraying perfume. But it's like, other than that, we don't really know how most people treat her. We know how Clive treats her, and Ravi, but who else in the police station treats her? Like, are there people who avoid her because they know she's a zombie? Maybe that's something we'll kind of deal with later on in the season. But I'm curious to see what the ramifications are going to be, because that whole situation is going to backlash on Major with the kids. Like what the girl did, like scratching him, like that's going to turn into a whole problem. It's like, yeah, we need more zombies, but we don't need to go about getting zombies this way, especially from people who don't want to be zombies. Like I said, that's definitely going to get spun out and like, oh my god, zombies are on a recruiting, like trying to turn anybody into a zombie. Watch out for them. All the while, we also have the story of Angus, Blaine's dad, massing up an army. He shaved and cut, looking good, not looking like crazy scary like he was in the premiere, but essentially he's leading his flock, which you even had that moment of them all having a simultaneous vision, and it's creepy. Like, we see it from time to time. Like, we've seen a multitude of zombies having visions at the same time. Never a full room like that where everyone was like, oh, it's like super scary. And it's like, oh, that was a vision from God, which is like, I mean, to be fair, that was visions from the guy whose brains everyone got a little piece of, so that was really interesting. So people are without hope and they're lost, and he's kind of sweeping them up in it. And it's kind of interesting too, because they're not just going after humans for snacks. They're actually going after, like, in particular, it's like this world belongs to zombies, the righteous zombies, because they even break up a place where, like, there's that soldier from Fillmore Graves who's selling off brains, the tubes on a black market, and they end up killing some of those zombies, if not all of them, because it's like, oh, you're up here trying to profit from this. These brains should be for all of us, and we're going to take it and basically run things, essentially. Because it's like, oh, God doesn't need your money, which is interesting. Like, because you even see them tossing out free samples, almost like in little bubblegum wrappers. And it's like, oh, come to this address. And it's like, oh, little girl, you don't have to pay. We're giving out brains for free. Tell all your friends, which is interesting considering the fact is all Angus ever did was kind of business. He was a businessman. All he cared about his money. I don't know whether this is some long con, like he's pulling a Blaine with the whole Blaine pretending they have an amnesia situation, whether he's pulling a long con like that, or whether it's just he's so deranged that he actually believes what he actually, like, he's trying to start a revolution, or, rather than just getting money, he substituted that, and now he's in a position where he just has pure power. He has influence over a large amount of zombies, and they're slowly going to come and mass around him. Because obviously people don't like the way Fillmore Graves handle things anyway. It's even something like the kids had talked about when they were talking to Major, just like how brain distribution doesn't really help and everything. It's not enough. And it's like, oh, here, he's leading people, he's giving out free samples, so like people are going to start joining that more, probably turn more against Fillmore Graves. So now, like I said, it's like a three-way fight, because you have the humans versus Fillmore Graves versus Angus and his flock with everything that they're kind of starting. And I'm so interested to see these two worlds collide, because like I said, you can tell like he's going to amass an army of his own. So, and then also we have the continuation of just the hate between zombies and humans and stuff like that. The kids were dicks. The dudes were dicks, like, in front of that store. They handled that slightly better than I thought they would. They didn't outright attack a zombie. Like, oh, you're going in here for business? Or to be fair, I just thought about it. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a zombie business. And even if it is, doesn't mean it's just, it's not selling exclusively zombie stuff. That could have just been a regular human customer. The reason why they probably never messed with her was, like, they grabbed her and pushed her away from the business. But it's not saying, like, oh, you're a zombie. It's more like, oh, you're going in there? No. Don't give your business to a zombie-owned business type of thing. So I'm sitting here thinking about that. Because I'll think, oh, she was a zombie going into a zombie business. But it's like, there's no, like, businesses specifically made for zombies. It's just like, oh, regular shops that are owned by zombies. Kind of, I should have been thinking like that. I don't know. Now it didn't click in my head until I was sitting here talking about it. So like I said, if it was a zombie, they'd probably go about it a little bit more than what they did. So I don't know. Like I said, they're doing some very interesting things with this season. And like I said, you can tell that literally Seattle is a powder keg. I was trying to think what the freaking word I was thinking of. It's literally a powder keg ready to ignite and explode. Also, I love that we had that whole thing with Ravi. And like Clive comes in and says, oh, Ravi, I gotta talk to you about something. He's like, I'm kind of busy right now. It's something of a sexual nature. I mean, I have all the time in the world. And basically, it's the whole relationship between him and Bazio. I was wondering about that. It seems like no. And this episode immediately answered that. I appreciate it, because I brought it up in premiere. I was like, I don't know if Bazio and Clive are still good. I mean, there's the whole aspect of zombieism, so it probably doesn't really make their relationship easy. But it's like, no, they're still in a relationship. It just makes the more sexual and intimate things very hard. And it's like, and you have Ravi being like, have you tried mutual? And it's like, well, yeah, but it's just not as good as sex. And then you have Liv on her brain like, oh, really? I'd hate to interrupt this conversation. It's like, oh yeah, you boys, you can go back in there and talk to, or if you want to, you can go back in there and talk to Ravi about your genitals. And he just kind of like looking towards Liv, and then he looks back towards the room where Ravi is. He's like, I honestly, it's kind of actually a toss up at this point in time, which one I would rather do, But he ended up taking some anxiety pills, essentially, that would decrease his libido. Bazio ends up finding out, and she's like, we'll find another way around this. Because it's just, that's a situation that's always kind of been an issue. That the show, even at this point in time, the show has never found a way around that. Like, it's actually kind of interesting. I'll just kind of free and note it. There's a relationship that's kind of like that. If in the show Misfits, there's a relationship kind of like that. That's kind of interesting, because one of the characters has a touch that will kind of make you go a little crazy. So, like, they have a relationship where it's like, we can't touch each other, because it's like, if she touches me, I'll lose control like that. And it's like, no, I want to be with you because I want to be with you, not just because your powers activate and touch me. So it's just kind of a similar thing. I just felt like kind of adding. I thought that was just kind of an interesting aspect. But, I mean, this isn't the first time that whole situation's come up, like, oh, somebody's human and somebody's a zombie. It's just like those relationships are kind of doomed, essentially. But at the same time, you're hoping that there's more. I mean, obviously, like, Robbie's work kind of makes it so, like, he's heading in the right direction. I mean, he's still there's still ramifications for it. So Clive wouldn't be completely in the clear if he took the dose that Robbie did at the end of season 3. So, but I'm very interested to see where all this takes us. Like, all these storylines about, like, the situation Seattle's in, as well as what this means for we are getting little peeks at the outside world. Well, not really the outside world, more like people on the outskirts, essentially, like, kind of outside of this whole situation, like, in particular, Renegade and her Mama Leone. But we'll just call a renegade, kind of handles things. Like I said, I'm curious to see how that like perpetuates going forward. That'll probably be something we'll see too. Like while the old zombie thing is happening, you have Liv, fight, whereas it seems like a lot of people in case, Angus's case and Fillmore Graves' case, Fillmore Graves tries to be a little bit more human tolerant. Whereas Angus and his group are obviously more pro-zombie, but Liv is probably going to be that balance, that in between of like humans and zombies, that she's going to try and help out both and try to find that balance, because it's something that I kind of brought up when I was talking about like at the time when I was thinking like, stuff that would come up in season 3 of like, they'd have to choose a side, and like, I was there like, Liv and Major would kind of have to choose a side, and ultimately they kind of have and did. And you see where they like, obviously Liv is not choosing a side, but it's one of those situations that even when you don't choose a side, you choose a side. And in her mind is like, Major's chosen his side, which is Fillmore Graves, and it's like, is that true? Like I said, I feel like Fillmore Graves is a little more in the middle, but I feel like Liv is going to be the one that's the most in the middle. Obviously, with everything and everyone around her, it seems like that's having Peyton, Clive, Ravi, that's probably the space that she's going to occupy the most, because the most important people to her are kind of mixed up in that world of the zombie world, but who are also human. Obviously, Ravi's in his particular situation. So, I don't know. I'm curious to see how this all goes forward. Like I said, it seems like Liv might be kind of pushing that like freedom fighter type of level, but ultimately we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.